Firewood versus saw logs. I've been logging for about 3 or 4 years now, and when I first started, I had a lot of questions about what was a good log, what was a bad log, and this is going to be different for everybody. There's lots of different factors: the type of wood, the value of the wood, the defect that you have, the size. I want to go over all that stuff here today, and what I send to the mill and what I cut up for firewood. Well, the first thing we should talk about is what the mill will accept versus what they won't accept. And in Western Washington, the mills typically take cedar down to a 6-inch top and Doug fir, hemlock, spruce, pine, all that other stuff down to an 8-inch top. So anything under 8 inches is going to go on the firewood pile. The other thing is if you send them a short log, and typically for us that's anything less than a 32-foot log, it's going to get deducted, and under 24 is going to get really deducted. So we've got to talk a little bit about wood values, because that's going to make a difference as well. For us in Western Washington, hemlock, spruce, and true fir are worth the least. They're typically between $250 to $400 a thousand board feet. Doug fir is a little bit more. It's in the $500 to $600 a thousand range. And then cedar for us is typically the highest, in the $1,000 to $1,500 range, depending on the mill you send it to. Let's take a look at a few of these logs to get an idea of what we're talking about. You go inside of the bark. So the top of this log is 7.5 inches. It's a 33-foot log and it's hemlock. The mill will not accept this in its current state because the top is under 8 inches. So I've got to decide, do I want to shorten it up down to like a 24 and take a deduction on the length, but is a 24-foot log at 9 inches even worth sending to the mill? Here's a spruce log. This is a 9-inch top. So a 9-inch top on a 32-foot log, the mill will accept that. But my question is it worth sending? So now let's look at some log scale charts and figure out how much these two trees are going to be worth. This is a Scribner log scale chart, and this is how we determine the board footage in each of our logs. Across the top is the diameter of the top in inches, and down the side is the length in feet. So we're going to look at that spruce log first. A 9-inch top, 32 feet long, has 90 board feet in it. Now I'm going to estimate for that hemlock that at 24 feet it has a 9-inch top. So we come down to 9, 24, 60. And that spruce with a 9-inch top is worth $250 a thousand. That log has 90 board feet in it. So when you figure 90 board feet at $250 a thousand, that's a $22.50 log. Now the hemlock's even worse, because the hemlock is 24 feet, and right now the mill's paying $200 a thousand for that. So that hemlock log is worth $12.50. Because it's sitting here on the landing, I'll probably send it. I've done all the work to get it out of the woods. I've got it bucked. I've got it sitting here. All I got to do is get it on a truck and send it to the mill. But what I won't do in the future is scavenge these small logs out of the woods. I'm not going to go out and take some blown down hemlock that's 8 or 10 inches top, buck them up, skid them all the way out here, and put them in the landing. It's just not worth it for me. Now here's a look at some bigger logs. This is another hemlock. It's got a 13-inch top on a 32-foot log. This thing has 190 board feet in it, and it's worth about $75. So this one is definitely worth sending to the mill. Here's a Doug fir, 11-inch top, 32 feet long. It's 140 board feet. This one's about $65. Now here's where I get into trouble, because I love taking my logs up to Fred and making stuff out of them. But my minimum is about 16 inches now. And at 16 inches, I can get some really nice quarter sawn clear boards out of them. I could probably go down to about 14 inches if I want to flat saw them. But for anything smaller, I'm just going to send to the mill. And anything the mill won't accept, I'll just send to firewood. Now the exception to that is cedar, because when I cut cedar, I can sell them even as 1x6s for about $5 a board foot. That ends up being about $5,000 a thousand. So it's really, really expensive wood, and that makes sense to take up to Fred even if it's 8 and 10-inch tops. I've got our pile sorted, so I got our bigger stuff here. Everything here is over 8-inch top. Then everything over here is going to the firewood pile. So this is either smaller than 8-inch top, or it's just a little bit too soft, a little bit too rotten to where the mill is not going to accept it. Now most of these logs are pretty good. There's a few with some defects I want to talk about, because the mill is going to deduct the board footage for that log based on the defect. And you're looking at this first one here. This is probably the best orientation. It's got sweep, so it looks kind of like a banana. And so they're going to deduct, I don't know, 5 or 10 feet of that log based on that sweep. This one has a little jog in the middle of it there. I don't know if you can see that, but the rest of these are pretty good. They're pretty straight. There's not a whole lot of defect in them. I shouldn't get too many deductions on these logs unless they look at this one and say, well, that one's a little bit rotten or something, but they're all pretty darn sound. I mean, they're all pretty good logs. That one's got a little bit of pistol butt in the end, so I'll probably deduct 3 or 4 feet off that log. This one is not quite 8 inches at the top, and it's got some pistol butt on the bottom, so I'm going to take this one from a 40-foot log down to a 32, and I'll cut some of this extra junk off. There we go. Now we got a 32-foot hemlock, 8-inch plus top. No pistol butt at the back, so we'll throw him on the pile. So I've got about 19 logs here. In the past, I usually get about 33 to 40 logs per load. So I don't quite have a load here. So let's go find some more logs and see if we can get this decked out to where we got a full log truck load. I do a lot of salvage on this property. Stuff that either blows over or dies standing. And lately I've had a lot of my spruce die and a couple of hemlocks blow over. When I first started, one of my biggest questions was, how long can a log lay in the woods before the mill won't accept it? And it really depends on the type of wood, but again, our hemlocks or spruce or true firs, they get a year, maybe 2, and then they're rotten enough to where the mills don't want them, and you'll get deducted so bad it's not even worth taking them. Doug fir, you can get 2, 3, maybe 4 years if it's hanging up off the ground and not sitting in the weeds and the brush and the wet. And then cedar, they can lay there for 5 years, 10 years and still be good. So here's a hemlock, blew over. Not a bad butt log. It's smaller than I remember, but I guess they always are. There's some knots up here about 25, 30 feet. And then laying out there in the brush. It's still kind of greenish on top, so this is still in plenty good shape. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to get this thing bucked off this stump. Then I'll go limit all the way up to the top where it's an 8-inch top. I won't buck anything. I'm just going to drag this whole log right out of the woods. My skid road's right out there by the top, so I'm just going to rope it and yank it out of here. And what I want to do, figure out if the butt log is big enough and clear enough that I can take up to Fred. We'll make some really nice clear trim or something out of it. And then the rest we'll buck up and yard to the landing and get on the next load. Here's our tree, 111 years old. Not very big for 111 years old. The butt log is pretty clear, up 16 feet anyway. So I think I'm gonna bucket at 16. That'll be one log that goes to Fred's sawmill. I might take another 16 depending on what it looks like up at 32 feet. And then I think the rest is gonna go to the mill. I've got a 34-foot one with a 10-inch top over in the pile. It's going to the mill. That has 100 board feet in it. I've got 2 logs here, both 16. One has a 14-inch top, one has a 15-inch top. Together, those are 250 board feet. So the whole log altogether had about 350 board feet in it. If I sent it to the mill at 350, 1,000, I'd end up with about $100, 125, somewhere in there. But I can take these 2 logs up to Fred, cut them into super nice, clear, vertical grain hemlock. That stuff's running about $5, $6, $7 a board foot. So if there's 250 board feet in there at $5 a board foot, I think that's $1,000 or maybe $1,250 for those 2 logs. I got to do a little transport and I got to pay Fred for the sawmill time, but that's way better than $75 or $100 for that butt log. So I can get over 10 times what that log is worth by cutting it up and milling it myself. Well, I've moved up to a little bit different spot, and there's a big old patch of spruce right back here. They've all died. They were real stressed last summer. They started dying right from the tops and they just died all the way down. There's a few that have a little bit of green on them still, but there's no way they're gonna make it. Let's pick one of these. We'll take it out. We'll do the same thing we did with the hemlock that was dropped earlier. Here's the one. My line here to drop this thing is a little bit tight. I'm gonna run it right out there, right at that white log sticking out there in the grass. There's a couple of little seedlings right over here I don't want to hit. So let's see if I can get this thing on the ground without killing all my little trees. Big spruce, I don't know, it's probably 32 inches on the butt here. We'll get her measured when it's on the ground. And there's an argument to be made about habitat trees, you know, leave them for the wildlife and stuff, but I like to leave the trees that are smaller, kind of crooked tops, broken tops. These are beautiful trees, big, lots of board footage in them. So I don't think there's any reason to leave them. The bottom 33 is going to be 2/16 for me. The middle section is probably going to go to the mill, and the top section is going for firewood. The log's suspended, going to come down about 1/3 over the top and cut the back side. Then I'm going to come in, cut the front half, plunge under, take the stuff out the bottom. I'll probably put a wedge in the top at that point, and then I'll work my way right back up and cut the holding wood in the middle. Here are those 2 spruce logs. I calculated everything we got off that tree. There was almost 1,000 board feet in it, and at $250 a thousand, it was about a $250 tree. Well, there you have it. We have our firewood, we have our saw logs, and we have our specialty high-grade stuff here. And be sure to stay tuned for a future video where I take this stuff up to Fred's, we quarter saw it up, and it turns into some beautiful, clear, vertical grain stuff. So thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.